Hi, I'm Ida Reis, certified divorce lending professional. And this interview is part of the Divorce Literacy Series from the Divorce Lending Association. And today I am really pleased to have with me Jamie Blum. She is a CPA and a CDFA, and she's the Director of Divorce Financial and Litigation Support for Argent Bridge Advisors. Welcome. Welcome, Jamie.
Thank you, Ida. Thanks for having me here today.
Oh, you're welcome. We're glad to have you. So would you please break down all those credentials I just mentioned for our listeners so they know more about what you do in divorce?
Sure. So I am a certified public accountant, which, it's a pretty well-known kind of licensure, which usually people that are CPAs practice tax or audit. Those are the most common disciplines within that. I actually have a concentration in audit. I know taxes, but I am not a tax preparer. And then the CDFA is a certified divorce financial analyst, which is a certification for specific financial information related to divorce, because there are very specific tax and financial implications of divorce. So there is a certification out there for that for financial people.
Okay.
And as far as my background goes and how I got into this, long ago, over 30 years ago, I came out of college and I was a CPA with one of the big 8 accounting firms back then. Then I ran an internal audit department for a few years. And then I went into business for about 20 years. We had 2 small businesses with the person who is now my ex-husband. And when we went through our divorce, it was a financially complex divorce because we had businesses and business properties. And even though I knew the finances, I still felt that I needed help, that I needed somebody to help me take a look at things in the context of divorce, help me make good decisions, and also to help me take the emotion out of things, because everything becomes emotional in divorce. And I figured if I needed help and I knew the finances, then most people need that help. And I, was not going to stay in a partnership with my ex-husband, I decided that, this is what I wanted to do. And this has been my passion ever since.
Great. That's great. I'm sure your clients truly appreciate all of your experience that you bring to the table. So typically, I just will go a little bit deeper on that. Typically, in any case that you're involved in, what do you find is the most common, most common services that are used?
Sure. So some of the things that I do are to help people understand their financial picture for their divorce, which is both considering what's going on currently and how things are going to look in the future, how life is going to be once they sign their agreement, and getting them settled in that. So this includes putting a list together of assets and liabilities, income and expenses, and then also determining whether there's any separate property. And what separate property means is, in the context of divorce, there's what we call separate property, which is property acquired before the marriage, or gifted to them during the marriage, or inherited during the marriage. And so they can be taken out of, what the marital piece is during when they're going through and looking to see, how do I divide the assets? So that's where, they have to sometimes remember, did I have a 401k or a pension when I started this marriage? And what might it be worth today? And anyway, sadly, if they don't have statements, it's hard to get statements that are more than 10 years old from almost any institution. In addition, valuing assets such as pensions, evaluating stock options and other executive compensation for people. And, that gets a little bit tricky because sometimes the awards are now and into the future, and, what happens to them. Evaluating the financial and tax considerations for the division of the property. In other words, you don't want to offset, somebody may want to keep the house and somebody wants to keep the retirement accounts, but they're not equal because one of them hasn't been taxed yet. So it's helping people understand that you need to look at all the facets and all of the, the tax and financial implications of the assets. And then also determining the financial need of one party and or the ability to pay of the other party when it comes to spousal support. If there are children, another thing that I help to answer is how to support the children, if there are any minor children, or if there's any support needed for adult children. And then also being able to run retirement projections to help them understand what may happen based on the decisions they're making today.
That's great. That's a long list of things, and certainly very thorough. And when you're doing that process, as you go through, what do you think is the most misunderstood thing that you find when you speak with clients?
Yeah, great question. I find that when clients, whether it's a client where we advocate or we work with a couple as a neutral, when they engage us, we have to ask for a lot of documents. And sometimes it's misunderstood why all that information is needed. And, people will just send screenshots or they'll send, a photo of something. And really, we need all the information on the statements that we get and the information that we ask for, because there are pieces of every one of those documents that are important to be noted, to be understood, and to inform us and the clients for these financial statements that are being produced. So I would just say that there is a lot of information that needs to be combined and compiled, and they don't always understand why.
Yes, I can see. I mean, especially for somebody who doesn't work in finances at all and doesn't understand it. So I totally understand that. We have the same issues in our profession. If you, let's see, are you normally part of a team of professionals in any particular divorce case? Do you find that is very common for you? And if it is, could you tell us a little bit more about that?
Sure. Do you mean internally or externally?
Externally, so that, the attorneys, opposing attorneys, perhaps, I don't know, maybe there might be a mental health professional, that sort of thing.
Sure. So in particular, in collaborative divorce cases, there is a team.
Mm-hmm.
And the team always consists of the two clients and their two attorneys. And then what's optional is whether or not they bring in a financial neutral. So I'm always a neutral party in that. And whether or not they bring in a mental health professionals, and there could be one who is a neutral and works with both parties as a coach, or they could have two mental health professionals. So when we call it that we have a full team, there could be 7 of us working together, meaning the 2 clients and the 5 professionals on the team.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good. Do you often work with maybe not all of those professionals, but maybe you are engaged by one part? I guess you come in as a financial neutral, right? So you're trying to find equitable ways to split assets, correct?
Absolutely. The good thing about the more neutral ways that I am able to work, and I also do mediation and I can co-mediate with attorneys, is that it really leaves the decision making up to the clients. They're not bound by what might happen in court. They're not bound by, what their friend told them. They can make the decisions that they think are best for the family.
Okay.
Without regard to most things, they can disregard a lot of even, laws except for child support. So, they could say, keep all of this, you keep all of that. And maybe had they gone to court or if 2 attorneys were negotiating, that would not happen.
Do you think that for the client, it's better to try to do this out of court? And it looks like you are litigation support, so you do often go to court, I would imagine. Could you tell us about those two roles?
I go to court very seldomly. I might be hired to go to court, but most cases settle. I think the statistic is only 5% of cases make it to court. And if people can stay out of court, I highly recommend it. It's expensive. You're at the end of the day having a judge make the decisions for your family and for you. and the judge doesn't know you, and they're only going to rule according to law and not what may be in your best interest. And so it's just better to stay out of court if you can. Now, sometimes it's very specific situations that go to court. So in other words, if we have to say, this person, had this amount of money in a 401k when they got married, and it's 20 years later, and this is what it's worth today, it could be more of a limited case, and that's what we call a tracing. It could be a very limited scope that we go to court to talk about. And in that case, sometimes that's needed, but for a judge to, have to rule on everything, it just seems like, hopefully people can make their own decisions, but there are times when there's a high conflict spouse that doesn't make it easy and just wants to fight.
Yeah. Well, it's good to hear that's a 5% or less. That's good. Okay. And, are you able to give us some information about one of the most gratifying cases you've ever, and you've had a wonderful career, and I don't know how much you can share, but something that you might be interested in sharing?
Sure. I had a case, and it was a collaborative case where it had already gone on for an entire year with just the two attorneys and the two clients, and they really were at a standstill. And they decided to bring in the rest of the team at that point. So they brought in me as a financial neutral, and they brought in two coaches. And really at that point, the clients had spent a lot of money. They were tired. They had become very mistrustful of one another just because of how long the process had gone on, and they didn't feel like they were making any headway. And so as a neutral, I built trust with them so they could understand I was there for both of them to make the best decisions for the family. They did have small children, and we did get it done. It did take another year, but it got done, and they seemed to both feel like there was a better outcome than had they had to drop out of the process and go to court. And that did almost happen because they were just getting so frustrated. So I was able to use shuttle diplomacy with them, because at that point they really couldn't even be on the same Zoom call because it was just too triggering for both of them. And we got it done, and they seem to both be okay with the settlement, and hopefully they're okay today.
Yes. That is really a great case example, and the value of your position when you come in, because in my profession too, it's the financial piece that is very troubling for most people. Finances, or the real estate, real property. So to hear that you are able to do that is really quite encouraging for those who are listening and wondering, they just maybe can't make it past the finances. So that's a wonderful to hear. Jamie, would you kindly tell us how our listeners could get in touch with you should they want to talk to you about their case or just to get more information?
Sure. So you can reach me by reaching out by email at Jamie, Jamie Blum, BLUM, at argentbridge.com, and that's ARGENT bridge.com. You can also reach me by calling at 571-636-1990. And we do offer a complimentary 20-minute consultation if you want to reach out and talk about anything, and see if you'd like to work with us.
Thank you. This has been an excellent interview with lots of information for our listeners. We appreciate it. Thank you so much for sharing your valuable time today. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me, Ida. I appreciate it.